Yes. So the question is that if the intent is so clear that they should remain confined to the practice of law of their jurisdiction in India, we have to ensure that directly or indirectly they don't do that. And as a member of the legal fraternity, I'm conscious of this, and I'm sure it will go a long way if the government give impetus to our own legal fraternity first, give them a level playing field, and then talk about the entry of the foreign lawyers and law firms in India. Interestingly, just to touch upon that, they have still kept the provision for fly in, fly out. I'm surprised. So as Dr. Bhasin rightly said, let's do it in a phased manner, allow them time to settle down, understand the culture. China, it has failed. China, the foreign lawyers are facing a lot of problems. And one of the reasons is the cultural integration. So the idea is, let them come, settle down, spend some time, have a cultural integration with the legal fraternity here. We should also understand them, they should also understand them, and do it. None of the Indian lawyers are less competitive than the foreign lawyers. And before I close, because we're running short of time and other panelists are also there, an important element, Dr. Bhasin, which I just thought, I must say, time has come to recognize not only one class of persons who can practice law, but two class. And let's put it in the act itself, barristers and solicitors. Let's do it. That's the need of the hour. So create two class. Define what constitute practice of law, not what A.K. Balaji has just said, the interim order. It includes litigious and non-litigious practice. Let's define it. So it will be in the fitment of the things that, as Manoj said, all the stakeholders should be involved. Legal education, which is the bone of the legal fraternity, all the stakeholders should be involved. The in-house counsels, the general counsels, the practicing lawyers, the law firms, the law universities, and we all should have our points of view, and government must see that yes, we want to allow the entry of the foreign law firm, but not at the cost of my own legal fraternity. Thank you.
And for his inspirational leadership on this. I think Manoj touched upon the various implications for the industry as a whole, and he mentioned what will be the impact on students, what will be the impact on the clients and everything. I think 2-3 aspects I thought were quite interesting. One is this whole potential impact on how law firms are owned and managed in India. I think the degree of professionalism that an international law firm can bring to the fore can perhaps inspire a lot of Indian law firms to be more professional and democratic in the way ownership structures are defined, in the way in which operational decisions are taken. So I think that I see as definitely a positive impact of allowing international law firms to come in and set up a base in India, because ultimately there will be some benchmarking for the market as regards what is it that you can expect to be in terms of truly professional ownership structures and not distorted ownership structures that some of the firms in India have. I think that could be a long-term impact for the industry as a whole. The other impact I thought was quite significant and a positive impact is the issue of technology and use of technology to execute projects more effectively, leveraging technology for the benefit of really using the optimal resource for a certain project or an assignment. I think the ability to be able to task a certain assignment right is something that we can definitely get inspiration from and definitely learn from. I think that's the other positive impact, as I see it from this. The third is the whole concept of professionalizing management of law firms itself. Although some of the Indian firms have attempted with the concept of a full-time CEO or management of the firm being different from the rainmaking and the other aspects of actually executing the project, I think largely it's been an experiment and it's not really been the rule with most of the large Indian law firms. I think this is an area where we could definitely learn from the international experience, where we are able to get in professional CEOs, professional HR resources, and the fact that and the firm and we have a classic cases of many Indian firms who've had best friend relationships with international law firms. I think my sense is that they've all benefited from the best practices that they've been able to be exposed to, and they were able to be part of. So I think to make that available across the board to a large section of Indian law firms and legal fraternity, in my view, will be a great game changer. So to that extent, I feel this is positive and we should definitely welcome this. In terms of the rules that they have come up with, absolute disaster, for want of a better word. I don't understand. I mean, one thing that stands out if you go through the rules is whole obsession with reciprocity. To the extent that they say that if I charge you $30,000 and if you charge an Indian law firm $50,000, then I will charge you back another $20,000. I think the whole concept of being completely obsessed with reciprocity and the fact that, for example, if I treat the other state as an enemy territory, and if your primary qualification, that state, is undergoing a political turmoil, I think there's a whole lot of confusion created by this whole due diligence aspect of where you're coming from. So, for example, if I've taken my degree from a particular state, but I practice over the last 20 years, I've been practicing the US. How does it matter what my country's status is from where I've taken my primary qualification? I may have moved on from that country. So, I mean, there are a whole lot of holes in the way it's been it's drafted. The other aspect I thought was interesting is they say you cannot do anything litigious. Now, there is no definition in the rules as to what is litigious. Is sending a winding up notice is definitely a first step in starting a litigation, a potential litigation. Will that tantamount to a litigious assignment? Secondly, if I'm allowed to practice only non-Indian law, how does it matter? Why should I not be allowed to do litigious work? We're not talking about Indian litigious work anymore. So if I am drafting out pleadings to be filed in a court in the UK or in some other jurisdiction, why should an Indian regulator have a problem with that? We're not talking about Indian pleadings. We're not talking about Indian appearances. So therefore, that's another confusion that I thought the rules were conspicuously, presenting. Then it says the law firm registered in India can engage advocates but cannot practice Indian law. So I don't know how it will work. So, for example, they have a client who has Indian law opinion requirement. So they contact the US law firm which has an India registration, and they will in turn outsource it to an Indian lawyer. That's permissible under the law, under the rules. But then who's rendering the advice to the ultimate client? Is it the Indian law firm, or is it the Indian registered foreign firm which is in turn outsourcing the Indian part of the work? So again, there's a whole lot of confusion on what is all this thing. Secondly, it says you can't appear before any authority which has a power to give an oath, like for example a court of law or anything which is adjudicatory. So can I appear before the FIPB? I don't know. So there is FIPB and similar institutions. So if you look through the rules, you find it answers, it asks more questions than it answers. So I think it needs a complete overhaul, and I'm sure Mr. Bhasin and the others will point out that these are things that we need to fix. But these are my quick observations initially.
Yeah. I think what Ramesh said is that there's a great degree that has already been said. First of all, thank you, Dr. Basim, for your efforts in this direction. I think, as the GC of an MNC, I think I'll give I'll try and give a different perspective. While the rules would be revamped, and sure, it requires, it does require to be revamped in terms of the subjectivity it has. I'll begin with the story, which was way back in 2003 when I was a counsel for Moser Baer, and I was doing all these international M&A transactions. So, but when I joined the company, and couple of foreign law firms came to me, and they had small bird nests offices here, or de facto offices here, and they said that we practice all international law, and if in case you as Moser Baer are looking to invest outside India, we'll be happy to do it from India, and at fairly competitive rates. And that is the time it kind of surprised me, because of the fact that they were practicing in India without the Indian regulators knowing, and doing transactions for an Indian company for an M&A outside India. Forget the best friend relationship. The best friend relationships came in much later. I think and obviously there were challenges with Indian law firms to that. But the fact is that I'm talking about early 2000, 2002, 2003 when it all started. So there's nothing new. So when we are talking about reforms, fine. Reforms are fine. You get to learn. You get more technology. But you face challenges as well. The fact is that let's talk about litigation. You get foreign law firms into the country now today. All big business. You talk about big business houses. Whether the Reliances or the Indian big business houses, or the Heroes, or whosoever it is. Legal advice is always, from an Indian market perspective, legal advice is always based on a trust. I would, if Dr. Bhasin is my litigation counsel for past 20 years, irrespective a Karen comes in or a Clifford Chance comes in, I would still go to Dr. Bhasin and not go to anybody else, because the trust I have in him as an individual, or in his law firm per se. I'm not going to jump into a foreign law firm and get into that bandwagon. Similarly, you're talking about phase one or phase two. I'm sure I don't know how it's going to work. And even from a let's talk about from an in-house GC's perspective. Today, for example, JLL is based out of 160 countries. As the general counsel of the company, I don't need to kind of act as a GC of UK JLL enterprise, because the fact is that we have an in-house counsel team based on the UK, and they do their own work. So I don't need a foreign law firm sitting in India for me to advise from a UK or US law's perspective. Even let's talk about them coming into India and settling down. It's the impact. What I feel is that, and that's purely individual opinion, is going to be short term. It's not going to be a long term impact. It's ultimately things would get settled down, in terms of brain drain or whatever it is. Indian law firms facing challenge because the students young might want to join a foreign law firm with a foreign branding. But at the end of the day, it'll be a short term impact. That's my view. Overall, the things would settle down, and once the foreign law firms get to know our culture, get to know our tradition, they try to mix with our culture, it's only then they will succeed. Like China was a failure. He pointed out, Mr. Amar Sundaram pointed out, China, the concept of foreign law firms is completely a failure. And how many businessmen today, you do an industry-wise segmentation. You divide the industry into 3 or 4 different parts based on jurisdiction. There are big business houses. What is the total composition of total big business houses in India today? 10% or 20% of the total industry-wise revenue? Then there is a B class, a tier 2 business house, and there's a tier 3 business house, and the huge local business houses. How many local business houses where work is done out of let us say individual houses, for that matter, would take help of a foreign law firm or a law firm, Indian law firm for that matter? They would definitely rely on specific individual practitioners. they would still continue going to them rather than approaching a foreign law firm. I don't think so. It's going to have a tremendous impact on the individual practicing lawyers per se, because you look at the segmentation of the market, look at the business houses, and compare it with the non-business houses, the unorganized sector. How many of them will go to the law firms? Negligible, I think so. So this is from a broader perspective. These are some thoughts which I have in mind. Of course, like I said, liberalization is the key today. You have to open doors, and reciprocity is all about give and take. I don't know what we are going to get, but definitely we are giving something, being the Indian tradition. But obviously we look forward to one key thing, which is the kind of expertise they bring onto the table. That is one key thing for our individual lawyers, our lawyers currently about to pass out of school. Because what I've seen is typically an international M&A transaction. What I've seen this kind of negotiation skills. I'm talking about 2003 or 4. The kind of drafting skills they portrayed at that particular point in time, I think we need to kind of still match up to that particular level. So that is what they will bring in, technology they will bring in. So I think it's going to be a good integration of the two. But like I said, the impact, I think that needs to be assessed. Thank you.